I was probably more nervous to that game than any other, even the test or the State of Origins, because it was my first game and I knew, well, if I proved myself that one, I'd go to the next stage, and it was all in my hands. So I was very nervous, and fortunately I had a good game, and as you say, we won the first time in 17 years, so that was the start of it.
Paul, the State of Origin series was a very, very tough physical encounter this year. You played in all 3 games. What was the feeling like when you stepped out for that first game in the Blues jumper?
I don't remember much of it. I was very nervous. I'm a bit of a nervous player actually before I start, but yeah, very intense is the thing I remember. Everything you do is so urgent. Like even when you drop a ball, you go to make a tackle, it's always so urgent, and you don't think that you can keep going for that long, but you somehow keep going, and they're probably the most exciting matches I've ever played, and hopefully I'll be playing them for a while.
Very, very proud moment for everyone when you pulled on the green and gold.
Yeah, just even pulling the jumper on, we had a few photos there, felt good. That's something I always wanted to do, and probably from the age of 18 was a real obsession. That's all I wanted to do, was play for Australia, and to actually don the jumper was terrific.
Chief, of course, it wasn't without controversy in the State of Origin series or the Test series either.
Yeah, I had a bit of a problem with my forearm through the year, but yeah, and it got me a bit of strife towards the end there. I unfortunately missed out on a test against Papua New Guinea, which is probably one of my biggest disappointments so far. But I think lesson learnt. Maybe a few of those tackles were a bit ordinary, but I always maintain, and it's true, there was no malice involved, and the technicalities of Blake's ducking into tackles and all those kind of things, and the spur of the moment played part. But yeah, I had a bit of strife there with the tackling.
Paul, a great end of the season too, with the Newcastle Knights making the semis for the first time. Bigger and better things in '93.
Well, we try not to get the expectations too high, but at the moment it's just that exciting at training. It really is. Everything's going to plan. We're going the next step as far as attack's concerned, and really that's the only department we've got to pick up. Our defence is impeccable with #1 defensive side last year, and of course club champion. So at the moment everything's going really good. All players are on board, no injuries, and we're breaking personal records as far as fitness and strength. So yeah, very exciting, and I really do think that we'll be up there in the top 3.
The year did go pretty well for me. It's the first time I've played it every game of a season. So I've been playing grade for 9 years. So I was very, very happy with that. And as you say, the little trip to England at the end of the year was just the icing on the cake.
And your form over there was absolutely sensational, leading the charge as far as tries being scored are concerned. You still in the front row as Union?
Oh mate, I put my membership in a bit of doubt out here against Canberra, but apart from that, mate, I was happy with the way I played over there, and the trip was particularly successful for me.
What about that World Cup final, running out there on Wembley, a sensational stadium? It must have been some feeling. Yeah,
well, I had been there before, naturally, and I had to sit in the stand and watch the first test in '90, so I sort of had some idea of what it was going to be like, but it's completely different when you're down there on the park, and the place was probably 20,000 people, 20,000 more people there than in '90, so it was pretty daunting when we came out. But once you get going, it's sort of, you don't worry about the crowd. You're just out there doing your job.
And you look really disappointed that Australia won.
Oh mate, yeah, I was real dark on that. As Bob Fulton said, if the Poms had won it, they'd have been called themselves the world champions. So we were pretty delighted when the siren went. It was a fairly close game, and just to get the result, we were pretty happy.
A great year for the Newcastle Knights in 1992. Of course, a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations on you going into this brand new season. Yeah,
well, I think we obviously advanced a long way from 1991 last year, and that obviously is going to put a bit of pressure on us this year to at least duplicate last year's performance. So we're putting a lot of work into it at this stage, and hopefully we think we've got the answers to at least do it again and hopefully improve just a couple of games.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. You got a lot of competitors a lot of cyclists trying to get contracts, especially this year with a bit of the recession worldwide. was very hard to keep your position or even to take a new contract with a different team. So it's just not easy going at all. You know, there's not too often I get to race in Australia. Like I raced once in 1991 and not once in 1992. And then when you can win the race on home ground, it's great, you know. I want to do something in one of the Spring Classics, which is part of the World Cup series. The Spring Classics being European Spring, so that's April, May, and also to do well in Tour de France. First of all, to get a start, and then hopefully win a stage, and maybe something on like general classification, and also to do well overall in the World Cup standings. It's a series of 13 races which all carry points, and I'd like to do well in that. I finished 21st last year with only 6 starts, so hopefully this year I can do bigger things.
The imagination ran riot in the northern New South Wales branches of St George as they battled for supremacy during the competition run in conjunction with the NBN St George Sports Star of the Year. Appropriately out west at Narrabri, they chose an equestrian theme with special reference to 3-day eventing and Sports Star finalist Matthew Ryan, with Jo Kane and her diligent staff putting up a great effort to win the northwest section. On the north coast it was Ballina once again. Last year they cleaned up with golf, and this year they went indoors to the very popular sport of basketball. Spectators were hanging from the rafters, albeit without a great deal of enthusiasm. Cheergirls were ever present, and the staff formed part of the team. To Baddo Bay on the central coast, and befitting that beautiful neck of the woods, it was kayaking and whitewater rafting that catapulted that branch to the honours on the central coast. Mayfield cleaned up in Newcastle with a watery theme also, surf lifesaving specifically, and what a display the Mayfield branch came up with, and the odd seagull calling in to check on interest rates. And on the north coast, Taree adopted a horse sport as their choice, and with Vicky Roycroft and Matthew Ryan as finalists, the Taree branch excelled in their magnificent display. Well done to all 63 branches right throughout northern New South Wales, and thank you for being a big part of the 14th NBN St George Sports Star of the Year.
For more than a week, 50 New Vale miners have been appealing to Premier John Fay and Pacific Power to allow their proposal to lease the now shut colliery from the state to at least be given a chance. But the miners haven't received an answer and they've run out of patience.
They won't meet us, so it's a case of we'll go and meet them.
Holding placards, 15 miners stormed into the Charlestown offices of E&C Management, the Pacific Power arm that oversees the state mines. The men demanded a meeting with the Sydney-based head of Pacific Power, Ross Bunyan.
We want him to come and tell us why we can't work that mine. Why is it that machinery all of a sudden becomes so valuable, it can sit there and rust, yet we can't use it.
The protesters got no further than the foyer, with office staff locking the doors. With the men was Sharon Morris, supporting her husband Paul's part in the protest. The miners played the waiting game for 2 hours until a Pacific Power employee told the men Mr Bunyan had agreed to a meeting. Just how successful those talks have been for the miners is not yet known. The delegation of 6 who travelled to Sydney for the meeting are still in discussion with Pacific Power Management. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Surfers were taking part in the Golden Sands 60s Surf Rally, a competition devised to cater for the original 9-foot boards.
The old guard of the Malibu or longboard circuit were thinking that all these modern Malibus were getting a little bit away from the old style of longboard riding, so we needed a competition to make sure we were preserving that true art of longboard riding.
There are 24 surfers competing in 2 divisions, early Malibu and late Malibu. As well as testing their skill, a novelty event saw these old dogs doing plenty of new tricks.
It's a fun day. Don't get me wrong, the boys are all trying out there, but yeah, there's a lot of joking going along, a lot of stories being told. There's some good times being had out there.
One of the largest displays of 60s longboards was on show at the Golden Sands Hotel. The semi-finals and finals will be held tomorrow.
On Saturday, a team of 6 bushwalkers set off into one of the most remote and inaccessible areas of the Barrington Tops National Park. A few hours later, 41-year-old Gary Pearson from Dungog lost his footing and fell more than 35 metres at Williams Falls. He later died. It wasn't until 5 hours later that his companions were able to raise the alarm and help was soon on the way. But the Hunters rescue helicopter flew into trouble, bad weather hampered landing attempts, the pilot clipped power lines and the chopper plummeted to the ground. The crew of 5 escaped with only minor injuries. With the helicopter destroyed, a second rescue team of 16 was forced to wait until daylight Sunday morning before moving in. Later yesterday afternoon, the body of the bushwalker was winched out by Polair, so too 6 of the rescuers, leaving 10 behind. Last night, a third crew was sent out with food and water. Foul weather forced the remaining rescuers to camp out overnight before starting the walk out of the rugged mountain bush. At around 2 o'clock this afternoon, the last of the rescuers returned to base. Fatigued but relieved the ordeal was over. For one rescuer, his sore feet a painful keepsake. Today, assessors surveyed the wrecked chopper, insured for around $2 million. The assessors report said damage was so extensive it's a case of replace rather than repair, and so the worldwide search for a new rescue chopper for the Hunter has begun. General Manager of the Rescue Service, Alan McMahon, says he expects a shortfall of funds to cause problems.
While the insurance will cover some of it, it won't cover all of it, particularly the fact that we've got to outfit it, and that costs anything up to $500,000.
Ian Osborne was piloting the helicopter when it crashed. Today was spent familiarising himself with a Squirrel leased from Sydney on a temporary arrangement. In the meantime, operations are continuing as normal.
I've got no worries about going flying again, particularly in helicopters. No, I'm looking forward to it.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. Rush hour at the school canteen can be a challenging experience for all concerned, even more so with limited facilities. Paying a visit to some of the region's schools today, the Minister stopped off at Talara Public to make a special announcement.
Who agrees that a hall would be good? How about we start getting organised to have a hall and a new canteen?
Students will soon bid farewell to their old demountable canteen, looking forward to a $700,000 modern facility, including a new assembly hall.
Hopefully work will start in September when the budget comes down, but I've authorised the planning work to begin now.
Meanwhile, the Minister says her recent announcement to modify the school certificate for students leaving in Year 10 has the support of the Teachers Federation, the Board of Studies and the PNC. Mrs Chadwick hopes to present the plan to Cabinet and then to the region's students.
It may well be that we can see some aspects of it next year, it may be the year after, but certainly as soon as possible.
A draft of the restructuring plan has gone to aldermen and management for discussion on the issues. As well as the restructure, senior positions will be advertised and management personnel employed on medium-term performance contracts, as required by expected changes to the Local Government Act. The main thrust of the plan is the creation of a new management division to look after commercial management and economic development. This is thought necessary because of Council's involvement in such enterprises as Williamtown Airport, the refurbished Civic Theatre and the civic area redevelopment in general. But at least one alderman objects to the idea of yet another division.
I think we could do with 4 divisions actually, and we've got 5 now, and this proposal means that we'll have 6. So that just increases the number of staff and the number of servicing required for that staff, and that just means a greater increase in cost as far as administration is concerned.
Alderman Tate is also concerned about the timetable General Manager Bill Grant has called for in wanting a final report to go to Council for decision in less than 3 weeks' time. Another provision of the plan, and one which seems to have met with more universal approval, is the refining of the Council's committees into a more efficient system, with meetings to be held on alternate weeks. Eight different community interest groups were represented at today's inaugural meeting at Newcastle Police Headquarters. They'll gather regularly to provide feedback to police on the public's attitude to the performance of the force and make suggestions.
To bring the community closer together with the police so that the community can have an input into the police and the police can tell the community through us what they have in mind.
The groups include Aboriginal, forest, elderly, women's issues, rural, road users, tourism and youth interest groups.
People in this northern region got together and thrashed out the areas where they considered there could be community interest, problems could arise, that community could assist them.
The initiative stems directly from the state government's review of all its agencies and last year's vision statement for the future. The police force is seen as one of the most important components with its high level of public contact, often in stressful circumstances.
Sport, Recreation and Racing Minister Joe Shipp officially authorised the calling of tenders to build a $5 million grandstand at the Paceway, replacing the makeshift facilities used since moving to the site 4 years ago. Work will begin in June and completed by May next year. The proposed 1,100-seat grandstand backs onto the Knights Marathon Stadium, but Newcastle Harness Club President Tony Halpin says there's no plans for dual access to the stand. Despite the positive tone of today's function, Mr Shipp expressed concern about disharmony in the harness industry.
There's trying to apply what these days we call a political blowtorch, but in essence they're matters that should be worked through by the industry itself.
Mr Shipp says only through cooperation will the industry flourish financially, and to help its finances, Newcastle has asked the Harness Racing Authority to increase the number of meetings it hosts.
If we were able to get 35 Saturday nights, it would certainly boost the profitability of the club.
Another club hoping the Harness Authority will honour its request to change its racing schedule is Wyong. After losing $18,000 in the first 2 of its summer race meetings, the club decided to suspend the remaining 7. It believes a combination of the recession and heat makes racing at Wyong during the summer months unviable. Club officials hope to hear within the next 3 to 4 weeks if a request for a winter racing schedule has been successful. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. When the Knights and Raiders step out of Marathon Stadium tonight, not far from the memories of many loyal supporters will be the titanic clash between the two sides, which saw Newcastle win and advance to last year's Winfield Cup semi-finals. Coach David Waite says last season's impressive form has the Knights as the team to beat.
We've been working very hard on how we play football, but we're also well aware that we now become a yardstick in the competition.
Coach Tim Sheen says so early in the season a win would be a bonus.
There's a lot to learn in a pre-season game. We've got new faces. I've got Gary Belcher back and Laurie Daly playing again, and I'll be just happy if our cohesion is there and we get through without any major injuries.
Canberra is the strongest it's been for almost 12 months, with Laurie Daly and Ricky Stewart in the scrum base, Gary Belcher at the back, plus international teammate Mal Meninga. Canberra has also added to its forwards New Zealanders Pongi and Lomax. Newcastle has also brought in a New Zealander, 23-year-old Carl Hall, replacing injured winger Robbie O'Davis. Hall, coupled with the strength of the front rowers Sargent, Harrigan and McCormack, coach David Waite believes his team is ready for the challenge. And if you're wondering why Mark Sargent may have a smile on his face tonight, he announced his engagement to Helen Johnson today. In the following game, East clashed with St George. Fresh from their Sevens win, the East side features 2 new wingers, including Brett Doherty, while Saints have brought in Graham Bradley and rookie Nathan Brown for the game. The winners of tonight's double headers will play off in the quarter-finals at Nambucca Heads on Sunday.
There's no stopping beachgoers. Scores of surfers were back on Bar Beach today after a pack of 6 hammerheads was seen cruising just off the coast. It's the second sighting in recent times. 2 weeks ago, a board rider actually came in contact with a shark at the cliff.
Appeared to be a hammerhead, about 10 foot long. Wasn't going at any great speed, but he nosedived his board into it, and the shark sort of took off and went the other way.
It's a seasonal move for the hammerheads, swimming in packs to mate. Experts say it's unlikely the sharks are off Newcastle to feed on the thousands of fish killed by mystery poisoning. The sharks are not man-eaters, but attacks have been recorded. Beach inspectors are warning swimmers to keep an eye out and surf only during daylight hours.
The water's very warm at the moment and there's a lot of school fish around, so I'd say that there'd be quite a few off the beaches at the moment.
The burst main was discovered at around 8 o'clock this morning when Principal Kerry Bugden arrived for work. Workmen were called, but with no water for toilets or drinking, the decision was made to cancel classes. Bus companies were called and radio messages put across the valley, but some students were already on their way to school. Phone lines from the school were kept busy for most of the morning as parents were informed and alternative arrangements made.
Break the water main and I'm sort of trapped here, so could you come and get me?
This isn't the first time the water main has burst, but hopefully it will be the last. The department has been asked to replace the main, which dates back to around 1940. In the meantime, temporary repairs have been made and it will be back to normal for school tomorrow.
The quarter-finals of the Tooheys Challenge Cup have brought some big footballing names to the region. Today, Canterbury's Steve Reardon, along with ex-Rabbitoh now project officer David Boyle, took time out to throw the ball around with some of Uralla's school children. Both Steve and David are in town for tomorrow night's clash in Armidale. And despite Steve being sidelined with a shoulder injury, they are both great fans of promoting rugby league in country areas.
Like, after all, it's a team sport, and certainly whether we're in work or we're playing football or any other sport, you've got to be involved in team and comradeship, so it's very important in that area.
Despite a few injury worries for the South Sydney team, David is confident the Rabbitohs can come up with the goods tomorrow night.
I think they'll win. We've seemed to have the wood on Canterbury, and hopefully we'll continue the run tomorrow night. But we've got capable replacements, and there's plenty of competition for the spots.
Game start at Doody Park in Armidale at 6:30 with the Cronulla and West clash, followed by the South's Canterbury game. Coverage on NBN from 8:30.
The Newcastle Breakers firmly signalled their intentions of making the top 6 with their resounding 3-1 win against the highly regarded Sydney CSC earlier this month. The goals that night shared between Nicky Meredith, Darren Stewart and Rob Brown. And according to coach Bruce Stowell, this new confidence throughout the entire team, instead of just relying heavily on their top goal scorer Warren Spink, is the reason for the Breakers' improved form.
We've got to keep others scoring, because if they mark one player out of the game, we've got others that can come in and take his place and put the ball in the net.
And to maintain these confidence levels, the Breakers' training sessions have largely concentrated on possession plays and finishing off moves. It's these skills Coach Stowell plans to capitalise on in tonight's game.
I believe the way we're playing through the middle of the park and up front, I feel we'll be strong enough to win the game. I believe that they're a little bit brittle at the back.
A win against Parramatta Eagles, now third on the ladder, is vital to cement the Breakers' push for the playoffs.
The 6 above us are obviously the ones that we've got to pull back. There is a normal attrition rate, because some of the sides have still got to play each other, and if we keep on winning, then obviously it's going to allow us to get in there and stay in there.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Shoppers at the Garden City Centre in Newcastle were treated to a touch of glamour last night, where a fairy tale scene was set for the crowning of this year's Newcastle Showgirl. 15 women aged between 18 and 23 faced the judges. After a brief interview, 19-year-old Helen Hutchison was named 1993 Newcastle Showgirl. Helen is currently studying economics at Newcastle University, but spends her spare time fossicking for sapphires on a family-owned property near Glen Innes on the Northern Tablelands. Shortly after, 23-year-old Tina Skelton from Paterson was named runner-up. Helen will now contest the final of the Zone 5 Championships tomorrow night. The Zone finalist will then compete against other women from around New South Wales in the state finals to be held at the Royal Easter Show in Sydney next month. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Two bushwalkers from the Swansea area found the body yesterday morning. It was off a bush track called the Null, south of Muir's Lookout. The body was in a sleeping bag. Backpacks were found nearby, as well as a motorcycle helmet and a wet weather jacket.
Well, the body appears to have been in the position there for perhaps up to 2 years or even longer. We won't know, of course, until the autopsy's been completed.
Dental charts were used to identify the body, helping police to solve a missing person mystery which has puzzled them for 2 years. Wayne Richard Wolfgang was last seen on the 25th of May 1991. He was 26 years old. Wayne's family spoke to NBN during Missing Persons Week last year. They issued posters throughout the country calling for information on his whereabouts. Wayne was a keen adventurer and worked for BHP as a technician. He just returned from an outback motorcycle trek when he disappeared. Police are still carrying out investigations as to the cause of death. They're also preparing a report for the coroner. What remains a mystery, though, is the location of Mr. Wolfgang's motorbike. He obviously rode it into the mountains, but police have found no trace of it. It's a red and white Yamaha, registration number CX581. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
$7 months and $500,000 into a 2-year trial of pumping sludge into disused coal mines under its Burwood Beach plant, Hunter Water has decided to end the project. Shadowed by controversy from the start, the mine's option was shelved after escaping methane gas was discovered in December.
And all the advice is that now the mine option isn't a long-term solution. While it still might be okay in the short term, it isn't a long-term option.
The decision has been applauded by Newcastle's Deputy Lord Mayor, Frank Rigby, who had opposed the trial.
And we have said all the way along it's a resource we should be using. Now the Water Board are going to have to go back and look at that resource and see if we can use it, and we will be very happy when that happens.
Reusing the sludge is among the 5 options now being considered. The sludge will be pumped out to sea while the corporation studies the alternatives, which range in cost from $3.5 to $11 million. The decision on which alternative to take may be 12 months away.
We want to try and get it right from day one this time, not try and always be coming back after we started the process.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Near-perfect conditions for the kayaking titles, with more than 80 competitors from around the state, all out to impress selectors and gain a spot in the state team to compete at the Nationals in Adelaide next month, putting in a solid performance to take out a heat of the men's Open K1 1,000 metre sprint was AIS athlete Jim Walker. The pressure was also on in the junior kayaking ranks, with positions up for grabs in the Australian team, which will compete in the world titles in Czechoslovakia in July. Taking out the under-18 men's K2 1,000 metre sprint was the combination of Foster's Glenn Crocker and Greg Prosser from Wollongong. Sydney pair Luke Chalmers and James Clayton were second, with Byron Bay duo Nathan Bagley and Kirk Tutt third. Just around the corner at Myuna Bay, the Newcastle Knights under-15 Harold Matthews Cup squad were attending a weekend training camp. The 20 players were being put through their paces in preparation for their first competition game on March 13th. Newcastle started out strongly, hungry to topple third-placed Parramatta. But in the 22nd minute, the wind went from their sails long enough for the visitors to do some damage. Midfielder Jeff Gunning scoring with this left footer. Within 10 minutes, Parramatta applied the pressure again, David Lowe striking the first blow, Paul Foster finishing off. The Breakers replied in the 42nd minute. An inspiring run from near the halfway line by Darren Stewart ended with the Breakers skipper squeezing the ball past the Eagles keeper. In the second half, Nick Meredith pleased the home crowd when his 30-metre knock found the net, levelling the score at 2-2. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.